In this tutorial, we're making a front tuck pouch. The body is made from book pages, but the main feature is the tuck. It's absolutely fantastic because you can use so many of your own basic supplies. I made all of these and I'm absolutely obsessed. So I have lots of examples to share today. That's lots of inspiration for you. And of course, as always, we have a plan. The process steps for today's tutorial are here, and you can find these and over 60 other sets of process steps for my tutorials for free on Pinterest. The first thing we want to do today is take 4 book pages, and I have 4 just off white book pages here. They are matte, not glossy, and I think that's preferable for this project. And I'm going to glue 2 together twice. The dimensions of my book pages are 14 centimetres wide by 21.5 centimetres tall, and that's 5.5 inches wide by 8.5 inches tall. Now you can obviously make these pouches in any sort of size and scale you want, but I quite like the result you get from this sort of portrait shape to begin with. And just before we glue, let me just clarify the wording that I'm using. So the pouch has a flap, which is this little bit, and a tuck, which is this little lateral belly band on the front. And that's the way I'm using the language when I'm creating today, just to be really, really clear. So we want to glue these 2 together, and I'm going to use a glue stick because it's less watery and it means that the paper won't ripple. And I've had quite a lot of success with this nice chubby stick of Uhu glue. So that's what I'm going to use today. And when I glue them together, I want the top and the bottom to be quite neatly lined up. So to make that easier, I'm going to put the neat edge to the neat edge so I can see exactly where I'm placing the corner, because we want the final project to be tidy in that sense. So we've got 1, very quick, and number 2. And today's project is really easy, but the fun comes, and I am absolutely sure that you're going to get obsessed with these as you start to make them, from diving into all of the things in your craft room or at your craft desk that you want to play with and haven't played with for a while, and you can stick them on and use them in lots of different ways to make the tuck. And I've got a lot of examples, different examples to share when we've made one of these, that I hope will give you a lot of inspiration for using what you have, and they're also really basic supplies. So having glued 2 together, I want to make one smaller than the other, and I'm going to cut off about 1/3 at the top here, and I'm giving you dimensions and proportions to help you use your book pages if they're not exactly the same size. So I am going to take this down from, I'm going to work in centimetres, but you've got the inches here. It was 21.5, and I'm going to take off 7.5 centimetres at the top here and just cut a piece off one of these with my fiskars. Cut that off, and while I'm at it, I'm going to shave another 0.5 centimetre off here, because I'm going to use this piece that I've cut off to make my tuck. You don't have to do that. If you want to use any other little bits of cardstock that you've got lying around, you can do that too, but I'm going to make use of the piece that I have cut off because I want a tuck that is 7 centimetres deep to go on the front of this pouch. 7 centimetres here, 7 centimetres here. So I'm going to keep this little piece here and put that on the side. And what I want to do with the pieces that I have glued together is take the smaller one and just run a little bit of sewing along the top edge. That's going to sit on the front here, and I want that to be nice and strong and tidy. So now I have 3 pieces of paper. I've got the glued together book pages, I've got the 2 that I've sewn across the top, and the spare piece left over, and I want to use this to make a fancy tuck for on the front of the pouch, and I thought I would have a go at using this wallpaper border that's been sitting around my craft room for some time. It's just one example of the many things I've been able to use in this project, which is really exciting. I think you'll really get a lot of happiness when you have a go at this project. Now this is too deep, that's more than 7 centimetres. That's okay because I am going to glue this on and trim it down. So I'll just get some glue on the back here. The reason I'm doing this is to make the tuck, obviously, to decorate it. And I love upcycling things that would otherwise have just been thrown. I don't know where I got it from. I didn't buy it. I received it from someone who didn't want to use it anymore. It was left over. I'm going to put that on there in the middle, top to bottom, equidistant. Trim off the excess at the end. Obviously I know how wide my tuck needs to be. And then I'll trim off at the edges because that will mean I get rid of the same at the top and the bottom and it won't sort of interfere with the pattern. And I will get a tuck that still wants to roll up because that wallpaper border has been rolled for a long time. However, I'm going to sew around this, and once I've sewn, it flattens out and it becomes strong and beautiful and looks absolutely fabulous. So that's the base, just needs some sewing around here. Once you've sewn around your little tuck, it will look something like this, and you can see how it stays pretty flat now and it's got that toughness. So I think backing on the little pieces of book page to stiffen this up is really what we needed. So now what we want to do is fold the flap over at the right point and position the tuck so that the flap goes into it really easily and can open and close like this. And this is where I've done quite a bit of practice on my samples to make sure that it tucks and stays in, but it isn't too difficult to weave underneath so that you damage the flap every time you open it. So let's take our book pages, and what we want to do first is position the trimmed pages on top of the full pages and just hold those together with a paper clip or two. So that can go on there, and I'm going to get this one up here. And now fold over your top flap, but just leave a little bit of maybe 1/2 centimetre margin so it doesn't rub on the top of your pouch. It'll be nice and stiff because we've glued two pieces together. Just give that a really good crease. And now we have a choice of either collaging the flap a little bit later with a piece that goes within any of the sewing we do, like this one, or what I'm going to do today first is collage the whole of the flap, so cover the whole of this flap with whatever you want, just little bits of scrap paper, and then we'll position the tuck and sew around it. So I've got some bits of paper somewhere here. I've pulled a few out just in shades that go roughly with the colours of my wallpaper border. So I'm going to just glue those onto the flap here in any particular order. Another reason I like this project is I get to do some of this gluing of bits of paper, and if there's one thing in all of the paper crafting that we do that makes a project one that I absolutely adore, it's, ooh, look at this, might use that. It is having a component within the process that involves doing a bit of collage. So just gluing little bits down. I find it just so relaxing. I like constructing things and I really like designing things, but I just love the bit where we come to add some lovely papers, especially if they're small little scrappy bits. I feel so satisfied when I'm using things up. Trim off the excess. Be careful not to nick the top of the pouch when you're cutting. I've got some papers on the top. What I want to do next is position the tuck so that the right amount of flap tucks underneath. And I have, through trial and error, decided that 2 centimetres of overlap of this flap over the top of this tuck is pretty much what we want. So I want to measure 2 centimetres from the edge here up and just make a tiny little mark with my pencil. And then I'm going to position this and hold it with the paper clips at the right point. So I'm just looking for that little bit of a mark, and I'll use the type, the text, to make sure I get it horizontal. It should be the right width because we started on this example with the book page as the tuck base, so that can go there, and that means that the overlap is going to be absolutely perfect. So now what we can do is trim the flap, and just the proportions I like to get the kind of angle here is 1.5 centimetres in at the top. I'll just cut it with my scissors in a second. 1.5 centimetres there, 1.5 centimetres there, and I'm going to give it a bit of an angle. I'm going to go from the fold, so from this bit here, not from the top of the pouch front. I'm going to go up 1 centimetre. It just gives the flap a shape that I like. Then I'll take my scissors and I'll just cut those off. Very easy. And now what we want to do is sew around what we've made. That's really pretty, isn't it? If you wanted to create a flap like this with just a little simple piece of collage within the sewing lines, then just obviously do your sewing and add a little bit of collage after. I've decided that I quite like the flap to be fully covered. I'll let you into a little secret. When I was making this one, which has got a ribbon, so lovely fabric on the front, I had an absolute disaster with my sewing machine. And if you can see at the back, there's a whole load of tatty mess here. Well, that tatty mess was all over the flap. I can't tell you what happened with my sewing machine, but I decided I'd keep going and I covered it up, and I actually quite like the result, and I love the ribbon and the fabric on the front. And with this one I've actually backed it onto the book page again. So just an example of where things go wrong and sometimes it makes it go right in the end. So now what we want to do is sew, everything's in the right place, up all the way around the flap, down, and of course across the bottom, and we'll be ready then to add any other decoration to the flap or to the front that you like. And I'll show you what I'm going to do, and I'll show you lots of examples as well. So now we've sewn around it, it looks like this. It's incredibly robust and just beautiful, and it feels great because we've used our basic supplies that we've got around our craft room. I just want to add a little bit more flourish, a little bit of decoration, and I dug into a pot of flowers that I made a long time ago. I made these without a die, no stencil, and I've just been putting them on some of the samples that I'll show you in a second. So I thought I'd add one of these to the front, maybe put it on here. I'll add that with a bit of glue, and it will just really finish it off. And you can make so many of these so quickly, it's just addictive. Put that on there so the blue all coordinates. I think that looks wonderful. What do you think? And I'll quickly show you the other examples just to give you even more inspiration, because I think all the different ideas in these are really, I hope, what will make you want to go and grab your own supplies and get going on this. So on the front of this one, I did a bit of collage and added a piece of card that was just sitting around in my scrap box, and I've got some simple snippets from a snippet roll, a very simple one that I made here. I think I'll do a video soon, a tutorial on all my different styles of snippet roll, which are very handy for decorating our ephemera. On this one I managed to let go of a piece of glitter paper. I had it, so I thought I needed to use it, and I added a very simple flap here. This is the one with the ribbon and some collage at the top, and that's fully collage. I just love that I've found a use for that. This one has got collage flap and some text on this one. These were all little bits. I don't know what else I'd use them for, but lots of little bits of paper. Here's a very classy one with the same border and just 2 colours on the flap. I've got my Tatty Scrappy snippet roll here, and this is actually wrapping paper with music on it, and I've used some washi on the corners. This is a different one. This is wallpaper. I made a masterboard and painted on it, and this is actually the centre of a floppy disk. I have a bag of them which my husband kindly saved, and I wouldn't throw them out. They look like buttons really, but not quite, and I wanted to do something with them. So I finally found a use, which is a fantastic feeling to be able to declutter things. So that is just sewn onto a little piece of cardstock, and then the cardstock's glued onto the masterboard tuck. Here I've got another flower, and I've used some sticky coloured tape that I had in my stash. I've got some music paper at the top of this one and some very classy paper on the front. Another of the floppy disk fronts, and just some collage and masterboard and a bit of ribbon, some faux stitching around the edge. On this one I sewed around the piece that the button is actually sewn onto, so it's just a bit different. I went a bit crazy with this one, and also it went a bit squiffy, but I carried on and I still really like it. So it's just a bit of a crazy pouch. A similar flower, and this is painted papers with some glitter glue, I think, that I mixed into it, and a bit of a jazzy one with a pink flower here. If you've enjoyed this video, I would absolutely love it if you would subscribe and come on this creative burst of a journey with me. I've added the tuck decoration ideas to the process steps, and if you'd like to make some of the flowers that I made in a tutorial a couple of years ago, then just click on the link here, and I'll leave the link in the description box down below.